Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. I'm Mark Banicevich, and today it's my pleasure to spend more time with Tony Vidler. Thank you very much, Tony.
Welcome, Mark. Always fun.
Indeed. Tony started his career in the Navy, did a lot of work through the Australian Navy, and got into financial advice about 30 years ago, thereabouts. Financial advisor, went on to manage financial advice businesses, get into governance, directing, runs a handful of companies now, and is an advisor to the advice business, so a mentor type in that kind of space. Very experienced man and an absolute pleasure to spend time with, so thank you very much again for your time.
You are welcome. Where are we going today, Mark?
So, today's conversation is about governance in a growing business. So last time we caught up, if you remember, it was a while ago now, we talked about what governance is like in a small business. And we alluded to at that time, businesses wanting this aspiration to grow. And what we're going to get into today is this concept that as your business grows, your governance needs will change as well. So let's start with a foundational question. What is governance?
Well, as I've said in the past and on your previous show, I often describe it to people as, does the boss have a boss? Is there a process of control for ensuring that the business is doing what it should be doing what it said it would be doing, making sure that it's compliant, it's running in a way that protects and promotes the interests of all of its stakeholders, not just its owner and primary shareholder. That governance is about ensuring those controls are in place.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it necessary in that vein for the owner director to hand over control, or can we have situations where they still have the final say, but they're getting some independent thought and some challenge on their thinking? Yeah,
absolutely. Governance can be quite a formal. We have a board of directors who have legal responsibilities and so on to ensure that they're doing the job to represent stick. But it can also be quite informal. We can have an advisory board type situation where I voluntarily bring you in to give me advice, Mark, but I'm not bound by it.
Yes.
I don't have to follow it if I don't like it. Arguably, that's not necessarily a great way to run your business, but from a structural point of view, it's a very good interim step. As business owners start to move from that model and mindset of everything is my decision, everything is about me, and the buck stops here, to, hey, I've now got a team of people that are helping me grow this thing for my benefit. Clearly, it would be sensible for me to listen to them. But I don't always have to be bound by their suggestions, as opposed to that more formal structure where we've got a board of directors, and fundamentally, the majority position of the board is the position that the company will take.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And in that final situation you described there, that what would potentially call a governance board, your directors sit on the company's register as directors of the company. They have all the legal obligations of a director, and together as a board they are responsible for decision making for the company. With an advisory board, the directors, the members of the advisory board don't sit on the company's register as directors of the company.
If I can interrupt, on an advisory board type structure, the directors still have control of the company.
Yes.
It's just that only one of them is a director.
Right, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're not bound by what our external advisors are telling us to do, and they're not carrying particular responsibility for that. Although, I don't think we want to get into the deemed director thing, do we? No. We don't want to get into that. There is the potential for them to get caught up in it. But generally speaking, if it's done properly and done well, they won't be carrying liability for the decisions made by the directors. The directors are still in charge. It just might be that it's a board of one or a board of two. Yes,
absolutely. So, I mentioned, I think last time we were here, that, and as we know, that most businesses in New Zealand are small. We have, I think, 605,000 businesses as at February 2023, according to Stats New Zealand. And if you break down the numbers, 94% of them have fewer than 10 employees. If we take out actually that 73% of them have no employees, they're kind of the sole person running a business, or shelf companies, or various people like yourself, with it being a director.
It's a lot of the tradies and things, right? Yeah.
So as businesses grow, their governance needs change. How would you've alluded to this a moment ago, how does that progression kind of look from, I start this business, I'm an expert,
I'm an enthusiastic practitioner
in one area, right? Whether I'm
Yeah.
a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or a financial advisor or an accountant or anything, I'm good in that area.
Yep.
And I start my company and I find out I've got all these obligations. I'm doing my annual return and I'm talking to my accountant about getting my accounts together each year.
Yep.
When does that progression change and how does it look in governance?
Yeah, generally speaking, and the scenario you described is very typical. Whether that's an IT contractor, a tradie, a financial advice business. We start off with an enthusiastic practitioner who, wants to be able to play golf on Friday afternoons and can't work on the corporate payroll anymore. Whatever their motivation is, it's something like that, so they want to take control. Without really realising that they're doing it, they more often than not begin with some outsourced management straight away. They outsource a bunch of financial decision making and preparation work to their accountant, and they outsource a lot of stuff to their lawyer. So they start to outsource some of the management functions automatically. The logical progression, therefore, is that they increasingly outsource management functions. You might start to bring in a practice manager now because we've got some staff, and so on and so on. So we start to outsource functions of management, which is what then invariably leads to, and now that we've got some structure and some scale going on around us, we actually need to bring in some additional knowledge base that we don't have to make these things work properly. Mm-hmm. So the outsourced management tends to be the first step towards the how do we go down a governance path. Now, a lot of small businesses, of course, just stay with I outsource my financials, and that's that. But those that are trying to grow and bring staff on and increase business lines and market presence, they increasingly are outsourcing, whether it's through outsourced administration or outsourcing to IT companies and so on and so on. Then you start to need different sort of knowledge bases coming in to help you manage that, which is when we start to go down I'll bring in a consultant, or I'll bring in that consultant on a more permanent basis and call that an advisory board member. In fact, geez, that one's so good, I might actually get some ongoing mentoring from that person. Mm-hmm. And they start to teach me how to fish. Yes, yeah, and then that will frequently turn into, this would be a good permanent sort of role for you to have here, and that's when you start to move into the advisory board thing. So the evolution tends to come from that outsourced management through, mm-hmm. And then at some stage they get to a point, if they're aspirational enough, they get to a point where they go, now we'll formalise that advisory board thing, and I'll make those people take some responsibility too.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then from there, some of them may go onto a governance board,
yeah.
But they'll be in the minority of businesses that have larger numbers of employees, for example.
Yep.
I would also wonder whether, many cases, most people who go into a business would be talking to friends or somebody to get feedback quite often. So you'll often start a business, and quite early on you'll have some informal mentoring.
Yeah.
And at what stage would you recommend moving from an informal mentor to a more formal mentoring arrangement, where you find somebody you think, actually sitting down and having a conversation with this person every couple of weeks or once a month,
yep.
And then maybe structuring an agenda around that conversation is adding some real value to my business? When would you suggest that happens? When
you've got a solid platform. That's my short answer. When you've got a solid platform in your business, and a solid platform is, we're now at a point where we know our business model works, and we know how to get new business, new clients, whatever, through the front door, with a high degree of certainty. We've got our system or our process for how we ensure that turns into clients or business that sticks with us. So we've now got a solid business model that's working. Mm-hmm. That's the time when you've got to start making the decision about, do I just want this to be a cash cow that just works this way forever until it doesn't and it gets superseded by technology or Amazon? Or do I actually want to start moving and getting ahead of the trends and the times, in which case, clearly I don't have enough knowledge to do that, otherwise I would have done that already. Yes. I now need to start bringing in exits. So it's that solid platform where you can have some confidence about the business's ability to carry on. Yeah.
So now this is a lot of the work that you do actually in advising businesses. So working with businesses, how frequently should a business meet with their mentor, and for how long are those meetings?
Okay, so meeting with a mentor would be a different answer to meeting with an advisory board.
Okay. Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's take a single advisor first before we talk about an advisory board.
As often as necessary. That's the answer. You when you're still in small business stage and you're trying to grow that business, and you've got to the point of recognising that actually it needs more than just me and my technical skills. Frequently talking to a mentor multiple times per week is a useful thing, but it tends to be much shorter, sharper, more focused conversations. We're dealing with a particular problem, a particular question. Help me on this one. I don't know enough about this. The mentor, if it's the right mentor, or you've got a series of mentors with different skills. You pick your person, ask your question, deal with your issue, and move on. That informality and frequency of contact is often then superseded as, you start to acquire the knowledge and the skills for what I should do around staff management, for instance. I now don't need to sit down with these guys for more than once every 4-6 weeks type thing. And generally I'd go on a relatively informal structure, meeting in a relatively formal way once every 6-7 weeks is about right.
Yes.
It gives you sort of 6 to 8 meetings a year.
Pull things together and think more broadly about the business and make sure things aren't being
and stay
missed.
focused on the bigger things and not getting caught down in the management stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you've already said that once the business starts to get a solid foundation and kind of a repeatable type of flow and some systems and processes in place, then it's probably around the time that you want to establish more formally an advisory board.
If you want to grow, yes. If you want to grow, and as I say, often the founders will be making a lifestyle choice, and growth is not really their ambition. Yeah, sure, they want a little bit of growth to make sure they're staying in front of inflation or whatever, but growth is not really their thing.
Yes.
Freedom is their thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's okay. But even if freedom is your thing, I'd still go, there's still a whole bunch of things happening in the world around you in compliance and law and that you're not necessarily keeping on top of. I'd still be looking at putting a structure in place where I'm bringing in that outsourced expertise and oversight just to keep us safe. I mean, if freedom is your thing and you want that cash flow to continue, you better make sure you're doing the right things to keep it continuing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think another thing I would say about this whole process of working with a business mentor or a range of business mentors is, you'll come to a point where you should realise that a particular mentor, you may have outgrown them.
Yes.
And it may be time to find a different mentor.
You should, absolutely. One of the things that I frequently say when I'm talking to people about coaching, which is a little bit different to mentoring, but fundamentally the same concept, is that you're engaging this person to take you from point A to point B. It's not a marriage. Right? Yes. This is not a forever thing.
No.
It should have a logical conclusion. So where are you now? Where do you want to be? Is this the right person to help me get from here to here? Yes. Then once I'm there, cool. Who do I need for the next bit? Yeah. And that's absolutely normal in business. You see that all the time in institutions, as institutions evolve, a CEO will be the right person for the next 3 years to take them through this part of the journey. But then we need a different skill set to take it beyond that part, It's exactly the same in small business.
And you kind of hope that a good business mentor would be the sort of person that would say, actually, you've reached the end of my usefulness. Let me introduce you to some people that can take you on the next stage of your journey. But don't rely on that.
No.
As a business owner, you have to be the person that recognises that that person has been. I'm really grateful to what they've added to my business over the last few years, and now I need a different skill set.
Yeah, I agree with both your points. Good mentor, good coach, good advisory board member, good director for that matter. Some of the best directors I've seen, particularly in the independent space, independent directors, they're very good at going, you should not have me here any longer. You need this instead. That integrity that goes with having the wherewithal and the confidence to go, your business needs this and I'm not the best at it, is something that you should ideally be looking for, but you can't count on it, as you say. But equally, business owners, and if I was to criticise a lot of small business New Zealand owners, and this is me very much becoming an Australian for a moment, right? They're often not willing to make hard decisions. Part of the New Zealand psyche is this collective inclusiveness, the common ownership, we're all in this together. Kiwis are really, really good at that. They're really good at that. It's also a little bit of a problem when you're running a business and they're not willing to make the hard call, I remember my business partner from years ago in a practice down south, Kiwi, good bloke, all the rest of it. We ran into some growing pain problems and all the rest of it after about 5 or 6 years, and suddenly realised that some of the things we're doing were really stupid and we're losing money on them, and some of the things were smart and we're making money on them. And so I said, okay, well, why don't we just get rid of the stuff we're not making money? Just stop doing that. And he was like, no. Like these staff, they're really nice. They are really nice. They're really good people. In fact, one of them was like one of the best staff member I've ever hired. Make it redundant. You have to.
Yes.
Being willing to go down that path, either having your advisory board or mentor or directors being willing to go down the path of going, we've got to make the right call. Yes. Even if it doesn't feel nice, it's the right call, is something that a lot of small businesses will benefit from, because they don't tend to have that themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you know, you're in the situation you just described. You can always be in the position where you help that person get another role. And
Yeah.
so it can be a good thing for everybody. Right?
You can make hard decisions and implement them in a nice way.
Yes.
Right. You don't have to be a mongrel because it's a hard decision.
Great description.
Yeah.
Great summary of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of, I won't bore you with Navy stories, but one of the things that I do often talk to people about is, one of the things the services teach you, regardless of which service you're in, and that includes, fire brigade, police, and so on. Any of those uniformed services that are involved in emergency management, you just have to make the best call for the majority. And that often comes at a price, but you have to make the best call for the majority. It does teach you to do that.
I do enjoy your Navy stories, actually.
Not on camera.
How then does an advisory board differ? And I think we've alluded to some of this already, but how does an advisory board differ from working with one or two business mentors?
Degree of formality and a greater focus on vision and strategy rather than management. Mentors tend to focus more on management issues. So what you will often have with a good mentor business owner relationship is the business owner is constantly turning to the mentor saying, I don't know how to do this bit, can you help me with this bit, where do I go for this bit? They're getting guidance on a lot of management, operational stuff.
Yes.
Once the business starts to evolve to the point where it has that solid foundation and platform, and the owner starts to recognise his limitations, as Dirty Harry famously said in the Dirty Harry movies, man's got to know his limitations, right? So when you get to that point of self-awareness that, like, actually I'm really good at this but I don't know enough about that, that's when you start to move out of the mentoring thing and more into, I need this as a permanent resource or a regular resource. Yep. So mentors tend to be very good at helping with management type execution issues. The advisory board and onto the more formal governance structures should be more focused on strategic execution of the pursuit of the vision.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much. I've got one final question for you. What advice would you give to somebody who's embarking on a journey as director?
As a director, I would go, first thing, be real. Be real. You're not God's gift to the business. You're just not. You do come across these directors that think that, my CV makes me absolutely fantastic. They should listen and do everything I say. Rubbish. You always bear in mind, the business owner actually knows more about how the business works than you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And they do. They know way more than you do. So keep it real is probably the first point. The second thing I'd say is, if you want to go down the path of becoming a director, particularly to directorships outside of your core industry experience, you've got to work hard at increasing your body of knowledge. You've got to broaden that. It doesn't need to necessarily be deep, but it needs to be broad. You have to start understanding the rest of the dynamics in the business sector. You have to start understanding law, whether you want to or not. You have to be able to read financials, even if you don't like them. There's a whole bunch. You've got to broaden your skill set, and you've got to work at that. And I think the third thing that you want to do is you have to be prepared to practice your craft. And practice your craft is, fairly easily done. There's any number of community organisations that are desperate for anybody that's willing to give them time and expertise to help them deal with their things. So start with your professional bodies, your community organisations, your passion projects. Maybe getting on the board of the Taekwondo International, so on and so on. Pursue, but get involved at a governance level with some of the passion projects. Firstly, it's going to expose you to a wonderful network of different people. But secondly, you're getting a chance to develop your critical thinking skills and understand where your limitations are.
Yes.
So you want to head down that path. There's no substitute for getting out there and doing it. Just don't be honest enough to not try and charge people for it when you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So. Okay, I'm willing to get involved in the professional body or the community group or whatever. I'll do the best I can as your starting point, and you'll probably be surprised at how quickly you evolve on that basis. But you want to go down the path of becoming a director, which is a pretty contested space. You've got to keep it real. You've got to be prepared to throw yourself into broadening that knowledge base, and then you've got to get out there and do some stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's three really great points to end on. Thank you. It's been really good to catch up with you. Thank you for having me back in your head office. It's a lovely view out the back of the office here, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again soon too.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you next episode, and feel free to comment and give me some feedback on different ideas and stuff for future casts. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.